Hello, I'm Richard Mize, real estate editor for the Oklahoman and NewsOK.com, talking today with Jim Parrack, Senior Vice President for the Retail Division of Price Edwards and Company, big commercial realty company in Oklahoma City. Also, Ev Ernst, Leasing Associate with Price Edwards, and we brought Brianna Bailey in, retail business reporter, so we can gang up on these guys today to talk about their year-end property report for retail for the Oklahoma City metro area.
Great.
Excellent. First, I want to defer to Brianna, who actually shops and knows about stores and knows what questions to ask. So go right ahead.
So in your market summary, you talked a little bit about grocers coming into the market, and you mentioned a lot of names like Winco, the Fresh Market, Costco. Can you kind of talk about what we're seeing on the grocer front in Oklahoma City and what we might see in the next year?
Sure. Let's kind of go through the ones that you just mentioned a little bit. You know, we should probably start on any grocer discussion with just a touch on Walmart. Walmart, depending on what numbers you look at, still has 55% or so of the grocery market in this town. And they're kind of doubling down in our market. They've opened in the last 18 months, or are about to open, about 8 new stores between supercenters and Sam's and neighborhood markets. And so they are protecting their market share, I think, partially by doing that, which is probably one of the reasons that Costco is being cautious about identifying a site and coming to town. As you know, they've opened, or about to open, in Tulsa on South Memorial. And they're kind of waiting and seeing, I think, how that goes before they come here. I think they will be here. I'd hate to put a time frame on it, though. Winco, who you're familiar with because you've lived in Idaho, who's a good operator, another discounter who can give Walmart a run for their money, has purchased 4 sites. It's kind of scattered around the city, and has taken their time, because I think we've all known they've been coming for a while, but I think they're getting close, and I would really expect them to break ground this year on those 4 stores. And those stores will be 90, 100,000 square feet, good prices, good selections. So I think it'll be a nice addition to the market. And then you've had, in the last 2 or 3 years, kind of the addition of specialty grocers, and you know, the ones that are primarily focused on Oklahoma City are Sprouts, Natural Grocers. Both have expanded quite a bit in the last 2 or 3 years. Sprouts is still looking for a few more locations. I think so is Natural Grocers. And there may be a couple more coming to town. Is Fresh Market, which really focuses more on prepared foods, fresh foods, which would be a nice differentiation between those two. I think they'll open a couple of stores in the next year to 18 months as well.
Great.
You know, I said I don't shop. I did at the Homeland at 2nd and Santa Fe in Edmond. It's dark. So can you, any idea what went on there and what is likely to happen with that space?
Well, because for the reasons we've talked about, the grocery market is getting more and more competitive. And so while we're growing, we're probably not growing enough. The market share of the grocery market isn't growing enough to support all the new entrants and Walmart doubling down. And so somebody's losing market share. And in some locations, I think that's been Homeland. And closing that store, and there's been a couple of, the one on Northwest Highway closed, was it a year ago, Ev?
And 122nd in the name.
Right, and so I think that's where some of that competition is showing up. As for who goes in there,
there's a Crest a mile south, the Walmart Supercenter a mile north,
right.
Sprouts is just more than a mile east.
It probably will not be a grocer.
Right.
You know,
probably Goodwill, I would suspect, is probably going to take a portion of that space, leaving probably another 20 to 25,000 for another use.
What is it, about a 40,000 square foot?
Yeah, 45, 50 probably.
Interesting. Jim, the gorilla in the living room is still a big oily one,
right.
Over all the local economies, so kind of bring him home. in terms of impact on retail property space and the performance of the stores, because that's really what we're talking about.
Right.
So.
Well, I think it's worth pointing out that if you just look at the market right now, we had a really good year that retail did in 2015, and there's lots of reasons for that. There's lots of activity. New shops are full. Even though our vacancy rate at the end of 2015 is the same as it was in end of 2014, we absorbed almost 1 million square feet of space that was added to the market and filled. So all those things are positive. And so if you just look at the numbers, we really haven't seen much effect yet in the retail market. But you're starting to see those kind of signs that something's coming. You look at the city sales tax that's collections that have declined. You look at state collections. You look at disposable income from royalties that people get. And those are the kind of things that ultimately begin to affect retail and concern retailers. And so, we had Dr. Agee from OCU write an economic article for the paper, and it's a great article, so I'd encourage people to read it. But it really suggests that the worst is yet to come, that there's been factors out there in the economy that have kind of propped us up and not let the pull of the lower energy prices be as severe as perhaps it would have been to this point. But I think that there's no doubt that we see a pullback in the retail and real estate in 2016 and probably 2017. I don't think it will be, I think it'll be uneven. I think there's some retailers that'll do well. I think there's some that will probably struggle a little bit more. It will manifest itself in a couple other ways probably. I think one of them is the development. There's a number of projects that are coming out of the ground now. I think they'll probably go ahead and come out of the ground and do well. There's a bunch behind the scenes that are either in pre-leasing or some sort of planning stage. Several of those I would expect to probably be postponed or pushed out. And so that's why there's a little anxiety in the marketplace.
And so what we're talking about moving forward is the economy and the players in the economy finding that how's it going to unfold between buying power, which we all have more of because gasoline is cheaper,
right,
versus when does the job loss start to really have a fundamental structural impact on the economy. That's what we're going to find out over the next year.
That's right.
As you being a leasing agent on the front line of that between store operators in space, what's their mood now and what do you anticipate as we go forward? Locally owned businesses, especially as opposed to national chains, what kind of attitude or feelings are they bringing to that front line?
Well, I'd say it's kind of mixed. I think the veteran, savvy local operators here will look for opportunities still. The good egg dining group type people, who have found success in just about everything that they do. The restaurateur types, but then, that business has gotten very competitive. Then you see other concepts like furniture consignment. Those have gone from 2 stores 5 years ago to there's 9 or 10 operators now. So you're seeing, I've talked to some folks that are in that business and they're, obviously nervous just due to the competition. But I think overall the locals are kind of just holding their hands, hoping maybe get past the election, see where the economy goes from there. But I think there'll be a little pullback on expansion of local operators overall.
Jim, you mentioned something that I had neglected to ask you about in the first place, and it was public sector tightness. Do y'all as property people see that as an indicator or as a real deal? I mean, again, if school districts are cutting back, if the state's cutting back, if municipalities are cutting back, those are jobs.
Right.
Either time worked is being reduced or they're cutting people. So kind of talk about whether that's kind of a sidebar to what y'all look at, or is that a fundamental part of what you look at?
It is. It's one of indicators. The best indicator we have obviously is when Ev's out there talking to retailers and gets direct feedback from them on what their sales are and what their plans are and that sort of thing. And so, that's to me our best feedback. But you look at things, especially like sales tax. I mean, if sales tax collections are going down, it means that people are selling less product, and that directly affects us. And so we use it more as an indicator. I think it's worth noting that even though it's not all gloomy out there, even though sometimes when we're looking at the energy business we think that way, there's a lot of good things in the market that have helped this from being worse than it is, and whether it's the GE Technical Center that they're hiring for, or the Boeing plant that they continue to hire. Tinker's doing great. There's a lot of good things that are helping buoy the economy, and I really expect a lot of those good things to continue, and so I don't really expect 2016 to be bad, but I'm definitely taking a measured approach about it.
Brianna, did you have another question?
Yes, I wanted to ask about Macy's closing at Quail Springs Mall. It's an anchor tenant, and I'm wondering what that means for the mall, and what are some of the challenges to filling that space?
Sure. Macy's is a huge company, one of the biggest retailers in the country, and is struggling everywhere. They've announced recently they're laying off 4,800 people corporately and closing a number of stores. I think really the closing here in Oklahoma City is more symptomatic of their corporate problems. And their corporate problems to me are really partially because of department store category in general is struggling a little bit. And then I think stores that haven't proven as adept at adjusting to consumer taste and being a little more nimble, and Macy's hasn't really done that. And so to me, that's kind of where they've gotten into their problems. Now, getting back to Quail Springs, it does create a big hole for an anchor. You know, our two malls both do well, but both of them need their anchors. And so it's 145,000 square feet that will need to be filled. It's going to be difficult. I think that, you know, just immediately it brings to mind, you know, the malls aren't comparable, but when Saks left the Galleria in Dallas, Belk came in and filled it. Those two retailers aren't comparable at all, but could someone like Belk come in and replace Macy's? Perhaps. There are some retailers around the country that aren't in this market that are department stores. Could they come in? Perhaps. And my guess is that will be the first step, will be to try to attract someone that takes up the whole space. And then if that's not successful, then the other alternative would be to divide it up into a little more manageable chunks. And there's many more retailers that fit, you know, 40 to 80,000 square feet than there are 145 or 50.
You know, there's another dark spot on the north side in Edmond at 2nd Street and Santa Fe. We were talking earlier about competitiveness in groceries. That Homeland is gone, and it was surrounded. There's a Crest a mile south, Walmart Supercenter a mile north. I think Sprouts just more than a mile to the east. I don't recall what's to the west, but it was surrounded by other grocery competitors. So what's likely to happen with that space? What, 40, 45,000 square foot?
Yeah, 45, 50,000 square feet.
What kind of tenant do you think would be attracted to that space?
Well, I think at this point it's probably going to be repositioned to a non-grocery use. More specifically, we've seen a lot of these boxes similar to Homeland be backfilled portion-wise from Goodwill, which obviously is not a real sexy tenant, but you know, they've got good credit and they're filling space. But outside of that, it could probably be a smaller grocery type possibly. Save-A-Lot has looked in this market quite a bit and is finally starting to do deals here. So it could be a low-cost provider like that, or a Dollar Tree, you know, somebody like that. It's kind of a combo of those two type of stores to backfill that space.
Probably a local or a regional or a national. What do you know, when you're splitting that space up that way?
Yeah, I think to get to that size, it could be somebody like that. But you've got the Binkowskis with their uptown up the street, so I don't know if they would want to bring a buy for less concept that close to that, but it could certainly be somebody like that as well.
Great. Anything to add? Anybody? All right. Thank you, Jim Parrack and Ev Ernst with Price Edwards and Company, along with Brianna Bailey of the Oklahoman and NewsOK.com. I'm Richard Mize, real estate editor for the Oklahoman.